Good morning, my Facebook and YouTube friends. In the dock here getting unloaded this morning, and I figured I would do a video of milking cows when I was Amish. See, I get a lot of questions when I tell people I used to be Amish, and that's one thing that comes up quite a bit, is about the milking cow process. So I say, you know what, I'll do a video. And talk about it. And obviously from community to community, it's different from my community. I mean, we were old order. We wasn't allowed to have any technology, but we did have cows. But as old order as we were, you couldn't have a whole lot of cows or it would take you all day just to milk them. But we always had to milk cows in the morning and in the evening because there's so much milk that they have to release that. It would get pretty painful if you didn't milk them in the morning and also in the evening. So I want to talk about that today in a video. And all of you YouTubers that watch these videos, they get transferred after Facebook. So if you're commenting, it's not live on YouTube. It's just live on Facebook. But anyway, we had probably, I'd say, 12 to 15 cows the whole time I was growing up until I left the Amish. And they were Holstein cows, the black and white cows. I know some other Amish had the like Guernsey cows and Swiss cows or whatever, like the brown ones, shorter cows. We always had Holstein. And so growing up, as early as 7 years old, which is first grade, I had to start milking. And I thought that was a pretty exciting time to try to milk cows with my tiny little hands, building some muscles. By the way, that's how you build muscles, is using your hands over and over, squeezing, trying to get the milk out of the titty. But we didn't have no milkers. You know, that's old order, so you can't have no technology. You can't have no electric milkers or nothing like that. But Daniel Slayball, Wilma Beachy's on here. You probably both milk cows when you was Amish. So I remember having usually two that was assigned to me. And I had to milk two and sometimes three. But if one of my brothers and sisters was sick, I got pretty aggravated because we had to make up for that. I mean, it took us probably 2.5 hours, almost 3 hours to milk 12 to 15 cows. So 4:30 in the morning, Mom would hit the register with a broom, and that was our alarm clock. So that was the first thing we did, is milk cows. Wilma says, "Good morning, Eli." Yes, I did many times. I'm sure it got old for you like it did me, Wilma. I got tired of it. I mean, it was a big deal when I was 7 years old. I felt, like I was a grown-up, being able to go out and milk cows. But as time went on, as I got a little older, I got so tired of it. I did anything to try to get out of it. I'd even act sick sometimes, but didn't. My mom didn't buy that one. So, if we had a cow assigned to us that we didn't like, we'd try to give it over to one of my other brothers. Well, if they didn't want to milk her, I don't know how I got assigned this one cow. Her name was Grace, and she wasn't very graceful. She was the spunkiest one out of all of them, and I'll share a picture in the comments when I hop off of here, but I have one picture I was able to keep that Mom didn't find and burn of me when I was 16 sitting there milking a cow. Now, this Grace, she was a feisty one, and I had to use this cow cant kick, they called it. You put it over the cow, and it would dig by the hips, and it had a crank handle on it. I would crank that, and it would dig in to where their hip is so they can't step forward. I had to use one of them, and if I didn't use one of them, me and the bucket would have went flying every time I tried to milk this cow. She was brutal. Oh, she was brutal. I went out and visited my mom a couple summers ago, and I walked up where my stall was, which was by the wall, and there was still a crack in the wall where she slammed me into the wall one time. And let's just say I got out of that, and I grabbed the pitchfork, and she got a little discipline. Wilma says, I always had to go out and do chores, feed the animals. It got tiresome, but I loved to go out and work outside rather than work in the house. Well, that was good that you were able to go do that and you liked doing it, because There was 5 of us boys in our family, so we didn't get a whole lot of help. It was just us boys. So between 5 of us, it could take 2.5, 3 hours to milk those cows. And I remember before our barn fire, which happened when I was about 5th grade, before the barn fire where we lost all the cows in the fire, that herd that we had there was a very high producing herd that we had. You could sit down in the morning and literally fill a whole 5-gallon bucket full of milk just from one cow. We had a very nice, healthy herd. And then in the evening, we had to milk them again, and we would get another whole 5-gallon bucket full. So you're talking about 10 gallons of milk just from one cow in one 24-hour period. So that was very good producing cow. Unfortunately, we lost all them in the fire in about 1995, I think it was, 94, somewhere in there. And then we had a lot of cows given to us from other Amish families that were nice and donated cows to us. And so then we got some cows that didn't produce, we got their leftovers or whatever, which was nice that they helped out, but we just didn't have the high producing cows, maybe 1 gallon in the morning, 1 gallon in the evening. So then I got really where I hated milking then. Because when you have the young ones, when you have the young cows, when you try to milk them, their tits are not as long, so you can't even get your hand on it to milk them. So you got like 2 fingers you're trying to pinch on there, and sometimes just 1 finger trying to squeeze, and it was just pain in the butt. I remember just being, and then if they're sore, if it's sore, they'll kick you, and lots of times in the summertime we're barefooted, so I got my little toes squished a couple times. You come unglued. You come flying up out of there. We had these little chairs, these little homemade little chairs, maybe a foot tall, and we would use deer hide, and put that over top for the cushion. And I'd be sitting on that, and I tell you what, when they step on your foot, you ain't sitting on that very long. You come flying up off of there. And so anyway, we had about 15. When we had 15, I really hated it because it took forever in the morning and in the evening. But if we were out helping, like thrashing oats or at a Amish family's home, and we didn't get home one time, then they would be already done milking. So I would try to take my time getting home so I could get out of that when I got up to teenage years. But anyway, we would sit down and milk. When you get that bucket full, then you take it into the milk house where you have a strainer, a big old stainless steel strainer with a pad in it, almost like a coffee filter kind of pad, but it's a little bit thicker. And then you dump it all in there, and it'll drain through there into the can. The cans are like 10 gallons or whatever it is, 10 or 15 gallon. And then that pad would catch that filter would catch all the dirt and grime that might be in the milk. And then when that can's full, we put the lid on it and put it in the cold water in the water tank, and then the English milkman would pull up. I remember his name was Tony Perkins, the one we had. And we would watch him pull in the morning when we're eating breakfast, because right after the milking cows, we would go in and have breakfast, and he would come in, and he'd take one hand. He had big old muscles. He'd start swinging them cans up in there. As a little boy, I was always standing there like, man, when I get older, I want muscles like that. Wilma Beachy says, I only had 2 older brothers, but 4 younger brothers. That's why you got to help out milking cows. You had to go out there and help on the farm a little more. Sarah Gingrich says, I remember that and the awful feeling it was. So you guys had an awful feeling with that too. You wanted to get out of it, didn't you? I got to where I just couldn't stand milking cows. It was something we did so much, in the morning and in the evening. But I just hated that mean one. That mean one, I don't know who come up with the name Grace, but she was far from being graceful. She didn't like me, but she kicked me so many times. And like I said, I'll share a photo that I still got of the cow can't kicks on there, and I'm sitting there milking. But it got to where we ended up slaughtering her because, see, when cows get caught up in the barbed wire fence, and they rip one of their tits and it gets infected or whatever, it's got a rash on it. You know how hard it is to milk that cow? You try to milk that cow with that wound, oh man, she's going to come unglued. So we had some trouble with that a few times, but she ended up getting an infection. I think we ended up butchering her. And then also, the cows sometimes, when they're out in the field, they'll swallow something that's metal. And we had this one brown, almost all over brown. We call her Brownie. Her name was Brownie. And she acted all weird, wouldn't hardly eat anymore. And we was like, oh, she's sick. She'll get better. Well, she didn't get better. And all at once, she couldn't hardly get up. She was dying. So we got a hold of the vet. Most Amish, well, my mom and dad, we were always poor, so we waited till the last minute to call sometimes. We should have called earlier than what we did because we ended up losing that cow. But she actually had swallowed some metal. The first thing the vet does is there's this like round magnet that they'll put in this like this little whatever you call it. It's like a pill popper. It's where they put pills in to shoot them down the cow's throat. Well, this magnet, they did the same thing. They put it in that thing and shot it down the cow's throat. And most of the time, if there's metal in that cow, it'll stick to that magnet and they'll digest it. Well, this was a weird-shaped object, and the magnet wasn't able to pull that out. It was stuck in her liver. Well, long story short, the vet ended up cutting this cow open. And I remember literally had that liver standing with the liver in her hand, that veterinary. And it was all, the liver was black. It was gone. She said, well, there's no hope for this cow. If you're going to butcher her, you might as well butcher her now. So we ended up butchering that cow. And, just eat her up so it don't go to waste. But there's no saving her. So things like that happen as well, It's just what goes along with it. And so we had to butcher her, but we ended up many times where we had to put that magnet down in through a cow to get that metal or whatever they swallowed. Wilma says, I remember many times struggled to get that milk can into the water tank, but I did it many times. I wanted to work outside, more exciting. So, was you one of them tomboys, Wilma? No, I'm just joking. So that's awesome that you were able to help out. You like being outside and helping out on the farm. I didn't have no older sisters to help out much. Heck, by the time I left the Amish, my sister Esther was just starting to milk. But anyway, I just figured I'd do a video and talk about that. How Wilma said, LOL, yes. Oh, you're saying yes, you were a tomboy? I know a lot of women that help outside. I mean, heck, go out in the field and help out when you have most of your brothers might be younger, so you go out there and you help out. But the milking cow process was something that I just got very tired of. I tried to get out of it if I could. And, we had to go sometimes help others too. Sometimes Amish would go to another place, go on vacation or go see a family at some other state. So we'd have to go over there and milk their cows yet too. So I'm like, I always dreaded that too. Dad said, when you're done milking, you got to go over there and milk their cows too. So I did that several times. Sometimes you milk cows for 4 or 5 hours before you're done, if you got to do that. But we obviously lost the good herd when the fire happened. And we got like 5 of them out. I think 5 of them that got out of the fire. No, 3 of them, 3 milking cows, and then there was 2 heifers, 2 younger ones that got out of the fire. But it's amazing. A lot of people don't know that cows can produce that much milk. Because before the fire, we could get a whole 5-gallon bucket in the morning and a whole 5-gallon bucket in the evening out of just one cow. A lot of milk. I mean, the udder would hang so far down. That's how they were able to snag in the barbed wire if there's a barbed wire laying in the weeds or whatever. Because they would almost scrape the ground. That's how much milk is in there. I mean, some of them were 10, 12 years old. And we could get a whole 5-gallon bucket full of milk in the morning and in the evening. That's 10 gallons in a day. So, and it'd come out real easy, too. You could be done, 10, 15 minutes. You can have one side done. Then you hop to the other side and do the other side real quick. Because you get so good at it. As a 7-year-old boy, I started milking. That's what gave me muscles. I just, you get so good at it, it just flows. It's almost like a constant stream. Of course, now I got carpal tunnel in my left arm, my left hand. It's probably caused from that. Wilma says, I did everything that my brothers did. Field work, working in the sawmill. Oh, wow, you did it all, didn't you? Sarah Gingrich says, I remember that fire and how bad a loss y'all had. Yeah, that's right. You grew up in my Kenton community, didn't you, Sarah? Yeah, that was horrible. I remember that in the middle of the night, we woke up and barn was ablaze. I couldn't believe it. And it was already so hot, the top of the peak of the barn was falling and caving in. I was devastated. I remember running out and I grabbed the barn door and I shoved it so hard it spun clear off its trolleys. The only thing I didn't realize was that just put fuel to the fire, because I just added all that oxygen, all that air, and it just, whoa, it got even worse. But that's how I got like 5 cows, 3 cows and 2 heifers out on the end that were right inside the door. And then I stepped inside for a minute trying to kick a couple of them, get them up. And before I knew it, fireman was behind me. Get out of there. We can replace them cows, but we can't replace you, Amish boy. And he grabbed me by my collar. He's ready to yank me out of there. He just barely had me out of there. 10 seconds later, boom, the whole second floor came down. So then I knew what he's talking about. But see, I was more concerned as a little Amish boy. I wanted to save these cows. I was less concerned about my life, but I wanted to save these cows. So that fireman didn't like that. He says, we can replace them cows, but we can't replace you, little Amish boy. You better get out of there. But yeah, that was devastating. That was a hit. I'll never forget that, because we lost all our horses. We lost all our cows and pigs. Had a lot of animals we lost in that fire. But that's one good thing I like about the Amish. They all pitch in and they replace everything. And the fireman was right. He was right. We didn't get the same cow, same producing cow, as much milk, but we got them all replaced. I think we ended up with more cows than we actually had before, because that many Amish people stepped forward and, hey, I got a cow for you. I got one for you. Here's a horse for you. And so I like that about them. You know, they all pitched in. But yeah, anyway, that's what I want to talk about. Today's video is how we always had to milk cows in the morning and in the evening. 4:30 a.m. we had to get up and start milking. And same way with in the evening. And we would always put this, it's like a V. Cow would put her head in there, and then you shove it over. It has a little latch on it. And we would bring him in, and we could call him by name. We could call him by name. Like I would just say that, Betty, come here, Betty. And she'd just walk right on in. She knew exactly where her stall was with her name, Betty, written on top. She'd come right in and go right to her stall. After doing it for so many times, they knew exactly where to go. They know where their spot is. And so they were trained. We would use grain. While we're milking them, we would put a pile of grain in front of them. Corn and oats and wheat we would chop up in the grinder. And they really liked that. Sometimes we would like put the molasses flavored stuff in it. Something they really liked. They always looked forward to that. And that's what made them obviously come to the stall. And they knew where their stall was. They'd come in, they'd start eating. And we would put the latch over where they can't back out of it. And we'd just sit down and start milking. That was the process. And like I said, if something hurt and they were a little sore on their udder, you'll know pretty quick. They'll step on your toes and they'll try to kick you. You know how many times, I can't even count how many hundreds of times growing up, how many times that bucket of milk went flying and all the milk just went splattering all over the place. That happened all the time. And of course the cats like that. The cats would come up and they'd try to drink that milk up. So it was like a treat for the cats. Sarah says, how thankful it was your barn and not your house. That's right. It was the barn and not the house. Jill Schmidt says, did you have to make hay? Throwing the hay on the wagon wears me out watching. It wears you out just watching. Well, that was very hard work, Jill. Very hard work. I always hated that, really. I hated that with a passion. I'd have done anything to get out of that because it was always hot in the summertime. And so putting up hay was, it's the loose hay. So you have a hay rake that is raking it up there and it falls down loose. So you have a fork and you got to try to even it out across the wagon until it gets all the way up there where it's above the upright where one of my brothers would be guiding the horses. It's past him and I can't even see him anymore. So you would come up and you would use these hooks and you put these hooks in the hay and then hook the horses up to a rope and it has a trolley on it and you pull the horses out about 100 feet and that hay goes up to the top. Then you hit a trip rope. It would trip it and it would go flying through a trolley in the middle of the barn and you get it right to the spot where you want it and there's another trip rope and the hooks open up, dump the hay out on it. So, yeah, that was, I agree with you. Now, when I'm out there and I watch some of them do that, Jill, it wears me out watching them too. The way I am now as a truck driver, it would wear me out. It would wear me out like crazy. Hang on, I got somebody bringing my paperwork.
We were short one item, so I noted it on the bill.
Okay, that's fine. All righty, all set then?
Have a good day.
Yep, you too, thank you. All righty, I'm empty, so I got to hit the road. But yeah, you're right, that putting up hay was just, whew. Judy says, what caused the fire? Well, you know what? It was kind of weird because we do the thrashing. The Amish do the thrashing with, the corn fodder. If you see those shocks, like they do it with oats and wheat, where do you see the small shocks out there in the field? But we just got done putting up the corn. When you put the corn through the shredder, it separates the corn from the stalk and all of, they call it corn fodder, and it blows that up into the haymow. And you use that for bedding for the cows and horses or whatever, you use it for bedding. While that's happening, if it's a little bit damp, you could about imagine when it's a little bit damp, it gets where it's moldy. It gets kind of moldy and it gets hot. It gets heated up in the haymow because it's all falling on a pile, so it piles up. And I remember having a couple metal pieces that it hit. He's coming back out. Hang on.
Is yours?
Yeah, actually, that's my key. I couldn't have went nowhere with that. Thank you. Brought my key back out. In order to unload me, I had to give them my key so they can unload my truck. That way they know I can't go nowhere if they got my key. So anyway, the barn fire, the only thing the fire department could figure out was, because everything was so burned up, it was total loss, is that while we were thrashing the day before, which was literally the day before, that sometimes you'd hear like a rock or a piece of metal that might come loose. That can cause a spark. And it's already going to be heated like it always does. Sometimes even hay does that. It gets to where it gets really hot and moldy in the middle because there's mildew or dampness in there. And then if that spark was there from maybe a hot piece of metal, but it certainly didn't start a fire until the middle of the night after midnight. It was like 1:30 in the morning when we realized the side of the house was really hot and big old bright glow, and we all woke up. My mom noticed it first. She went berserk, and we all flew out of the house and went running out there. But that's the only thing we can figure out is it started in the middle of the night as it was sitting there from the day before, getting really hot and smothering in there, and it just started burning. I mean, there's quite a bit of Amish barns that burned down because of that, but it's just something that we got to deal with. It's better off to spread it out, I think. If you got enough room, you can spread that corn fodder out far enough to where it's got room to like air out or whatever, so it's not all on a one pile and getting all hot and moldy in the middle. Daniel Beachy says, we use the hook and also the slings. Yeah, we had the slings as well. The hook worked and the slings worked for the hay. Ivan Yoder says, very interesting and so accurate of how things were performed and happened during growing up years in the Amish life. Yeah, there's a lot of you ex-Amish on here that know exactly what I'm talking about. We've all done it, especially if you were old order Amish where you wasn't allowed to have any technology, any tractors or any balers. We never baled hay. I mean, it was very, I think a couple people did bale. They allowed them to. It wasn't really a rule, but we just never baled. We always did the loose hay. Nancy Weaver says, I used to help with the bale hay. Well, yeah, that'd be nice. I like the bale hay better. I'd rather go out and stack it on a wagon because the loose hay was just so, get down in your shirt and you're sweating and it's 100 degrees out. Oh, it drives you crazy. And then I didn't get a shower until Saturday night. So, but anyway, I'm empty. I got to hit the road, y'all. Nice chatting with y'all. Y'all have a blessed day today. See ya.